So in this video, I just wanted to let people know I clipped in an additional segment showing the type of DPS and the rotation that I'm using, uh, as opposed to just discussing talents and specs. Hey guys, so I wanted to do a video for PvP fire mages because they're a tremendous amount of fun. I found that through the talent tree, there's different ways that you can focus. You can focus almost in like an AOE fire and like a burn down for groups, and then you can focus on single target damage more. I found that in PvP, I mean ultimately, you're trying to lock up healers and you're trying to do great single target burst. I find that when you're doing AOE, you're not as viable. And I feel it's easier for healers to control. So with that said, I went for heavy burst and survivability. So the talent tree, as I chose it, is 1 3 3 3 3 1 1. So 1 3 3 3 3 1 1. For my honor talents, I went 1 1 3 2 1 2. So 1 1 3 2 1 2. So the fire main abilities haven't changed. We got Fireball, Pyroblast, Hot Streak, Inferno Blast, Combustion, and Scorch. For the talents, I kind of want to explain to you why I chose what I chose. So casting Pyroblast or Flame Strike while Hot Streak is active has an 8% chance of instantly reactivating Hot Streak. So what that means is once your Hot Streak's up, your Pyroblast, and the ability that you're hitting has an 8% chance to bring it back, so you can get another one. In comparison to the other abilities, a Conflag, to deal additional damage, it's low, and for it to be applying to other targets, I found that it just really wasn't really useful in the PvP sense. You're just not really getting a chance to hit targets nearby all the time. The other ability, Firestarter, your Fireball spell always deals a critical strike on targets above 90%. So with that said, you could start off every fight this way with a Fireball and an Inferno Blast, because an Inferno Blast is a guaranteed crit. So that's what you're working on. You're working on 2 crits in a row and how you can get there. When you get your first crit, you get 2 small markers on either side of your body telling you that you're heating up and that you're ramping up for a hot streak. I found that it's very easy to get the hot streak going. I know you can basically guarantee it with Firestarter, but to keep your hot streak going, to keep max damage going, Pyromaniac is really cool, because once you start chucking Pyroblast, what I found that Pyroblast, Phoenix Flame, Pyroblast, Phoenix Flame, if they're proccing and you're getting to use them one after another, you're doing a tremendous amount of damage. It's great burst, and they're instants, so they're great for running around and hopping around and avoiding targets. So I went that way, and the procs are great. Cold Snap. So let's talk about this here. Shimmer is another teleport that'll move you away. It's kind of another evasive maneuver. I found that teleports and stuff are great, but the other 2 abilities seem to work better for me. Cauterize is hysterical. So when you die, this can happen every 2 minutes. So every 2 minutes you're given a fatal hit, returns you to 35%, but then you're burnt for 28% of the health over 6 seconds. So what that basically means is that a healer has to bring you back up. While you're in that state, you have burning feet, and you're moving at a 150% speed, so you can get out very quickly. But like I said, you need that healer there. We're in the beta, we're still getting established, so I found that Cold Snap, because what this does, it gives your Ice Block 2 charges, and then also allows you to heal for 3% of your maximum health over 3 seconds while in the ice block. So if you don't have a healer around, this is the talent for you. But I think, as things get more established, in the battlegrounds, you'll find that Cauterize is a great ability for an RBG team. Cold Snap, maybe if you're in an arena without heals. If you were with heals, I think Cauterize would still be that fantastic ability, because every 2 minutes you can fly away. Incanter's Flow. Magical energy flows through you while in combat, building up to 20% increased damage and then diminishing down to 4% damage, cycling every 10 seconds. This is a great ability. It constantly gives you a boost to damage. The Rune of Power will give you a 50% increase to damage for 10 seconds. But like I said, it's not in full rotation. It's on a 45-second recharge, and it's only lasting for 10 seconds. So there is time where you're even below the 4% that you would be with the Incanter's Flow. So even though it bursts up, you might find yourself in a situation where you don't necessarily need that. Mirror Images, it's a great ability. I don't think the damage was too high on it, and people generally can see through your mirror images pretty quickly, so I just went with the overall higher static burst damage. In the 4th tier for level 60, Controlled Burn. When you're heating up, you have a 10% chance to instantly activate Hot Streak. So with that said, that means off your first crit you have a 10% chance to instantly grant yourself a Pyroblast. That's what we're working on. So I felt that increasing my chances was great. Flame On immediately grants 2 charges of Infernal Blast. So like I said, these Infernal Blasts are guaranteed crit hits. They're hitting the target for 35,000 damage. So with that said, I mean, the magic number that I'm seeing in PvP right now is 100,000 DPS. I mean, if you can stay up at like 100,000 DPS right now, you're doing really good. So throwing a 35,000 instant, I mean, even if it comes behind a Fireball and such, or a Scorch, isn't really that high. Your Scorch is your ability that you can cast while moving. So let's say you're in a moving situation, but you're still trying to do 100,000 DPS. This is a 1.4 second cast on the Scorch. It's only doing 12,000. So 12,000 plus your Infernal Blast brings you to like 50,000, which is well below the DPS mean. So I feel that the focus isn't trying to keep that rotation going so much, and it's not trying to just spam Infernal Blast, because then you're dealing with global cooldowns and you're just not getting your DPS out appropriately enough. So we stepped away from that. Blast Wave, causing explosion around you, dealing 47,000 damage to all enemies within 8 yards. So I mean, we could start talking about big numbers. So you go into a battleground, what do they have? They have 3 healers, they have 3 melee, and they have 4 ranged. Now that's not necessarily the numbers, but you got 4 ranged, you got 3 melee. If you have all 3 melee on you, then potentially you're doing 150,000 damage to these targets and slowing them and stuff. I didn't feel it to be viable enough. Like I said, I want to be doing burst damage on one target, along with my teammates, and know that we're dropping stuff. So that's why I chose what I chose. Ice Ward. Frost Nova now has 2 charges. So as far as outs go, and what I was seeing, you have to see how you're going to defend yourself against a caster, and how you're going to defend yourself against a melee class. I found that having 2 charges of Frost Nova for the melee classes was necessary. I didn't necessarily need slows, because slows necessarily aren't enough. Ice Flows makes your spells with a cast time shorter than 10 seconds castable while moving. I didn't necessarily want that, because outs are really important. And I will use my Scorch to proc my instance properly enough, if that makes sense, and I'll allow myself to have another out. Um, Ice flows could be used to manipulate the fire blast, while running around, the fireball while running around. Um, but I wanted my fireball to be a low cast, something that I'm not using necessarily too often. So you'll notice in the honor tree, just to jump ahead really quick, there's the ability Tinder. If you have not cast Fireball for 8 seconds, your next Fireball will deal 30% increased damage and have a 50% reduced time. So if a Fireball has almost 2-second cast, it has less than a 1-second cast now, which makes it very viable DPS for PvP at that point. And considering it's doing 30% more damage, then it's a useful hit. Otherwise, I found that the DPS is proccing Pyroblast and using the Phoenix Flames charges appropriately and kind of rotating between so that you can get charges back on the Phoenix Flame appropriately. So in this tree here, this is interesting. So as I found while running around, I found that by putting Living Bomb up on targets, I was giving myself a chance to proc my initial heating up for Hot Streak. So I found that it had good odds of critting. It's not the greatest damage, but if you look through the tree, so a fireball has a 30% chance to explode, dealing 50% damage to targets within 8 yards of the enemy. So on an initial run-in, something like that is viable, but like I said, as targets start to spread out a little bit, considering you're only given a 30% chance to hit the target within 8 yards, it's not incredible. So I stepped away. Flame Patch, Flame Strike leaves behind a patch. Alright, so Flame Strike leaves behind a patch of flames which burns for 38,000 over 8 seconds. It's not enough damage, and considering targets are moving around in PvP, the Living Bomb was still the way to go, even though it's just not incredibly great. It explodes, and when it does explode, it hits for a 10-yard range as opposed to an 8-yard range, which tends to be a little bit more damage. And that might be necessarily where you find that you get your crit, your first crit. At the bottom of the tree, Kindling, your Fireball, Pyroblast, Inferno, Critical Strikes reduce the remaining cooldown on Combustion. Combustion has a 2-minute cooldown. When you're heated up, you get this fiery image. When you have that up, you have a critical strike chance of 100%. So it's great when you're moving around, you want to Scorch an Inferno Blast, and you want to try to get your stuff going. Combustion is a great starter ability for getting things going for you. You might find that if you're not being targeted necessarily at the beginning of a fight, you hold on to your Combustion. You start to heat up on your own and start to work your rotation. By bringing Combustion in later, will allow you to keep your high DPS going for a very long amount of time. The other abilities, Meteor does a tremendous amount of damage on an instant. It's 130,000, but it's split evenly with targets within 8 yards. So if someone's around your target, they're reducing the damage, and it's being spread out, which I find that healers can control that type of stuff. So I wanted more steady burst. I'm sorry for being a little redundant, but I'm trying to really drill home the single target DPS point. So Cinderstorm, it spreads 6 cinders at travel in an arc, dealing 11,000 fire damage to enemies it hits. Damage increased by 30% if the target is affected by your ignite. Once again, so you're talking about around 80,000 DPS on a 1.4 second cooldown. I didn't find it to really be great. I mean, I know it would help with proccing stuff, but I found that lowering the cooldown on my combustion was necessary, because as you start to build gear and isolate your secondary stat, if you're focusing crit, this kindling ability is going to become more and more useful as you go. So in the honor tree, I went with the Gladiator's Medallion. I found that I wanted to be able to control my out. It just tends to work better, I felt, for the class. Also here, I felt that the haste wasn't necessarily needed so much, because you can cast while moving with the Scourge. And as far as crits on targets above 80%, I'm concerned with critting targets at 20% and 30% out, so that we can put them in the graveyard. So I went with static damage. I felt that this comes back quick enough, and if you watch it, it's a great ability. And when you start stacking damage, I mean, so you've got increased damage here. It's like I'm sorry. But you're getting increased damage by 30% here off the tinder for the fireball. I apologize for that. So you get 15% here, 30% increase for the fireball, and right here is flame cannon. So while you're standing still for 2 seconds, your maximum health increases, your damage done increases, and your spell's range increase by 5 yards, stacking up to 3 times. So you come into range of a target, you plant your feet, now the target starts to run, you've increased your range, so now you're still able to cast on him as he's getting away. It just gives you a little bit more time, and then you have the blink. And Frost Novas, it's too much fun. So you're gaining 15% increased damage there, 15% increased damage there, potentially, with the tinder, you're bringing your fireball up. That's I'm sorry, 60% damage. So 60% damage on a 43,000 spell. Now it's becoming a very viable DPS as well there. So where were we? We've increased your damage, your train of thought. Prismatic Cloak. So when you're taking damage, you blink and you ice block. If you look at this tree, you got the Nether Wind Armor, which reduces your chance to suffer a critical strike by 15%, which is a passive critical. But taking damage is taking damage, and it's really a matter of whether you're getting a healer on you or not necessarily whether you're being crit or not, because when you start getting 2 or 3 targets, it's not necessarily whether you're being crit that's putting you in the graveyard. Burning Determination. After being interrupted while casting a spell, you become immune to being interrupted. I find that you're doing a lot of instants. That's where you're focused as far as the direct damage. So you're not necessarily worried too much about being interrupted. This one here, Prismatic Cloak, after you blink, spells have a 100% chance to miss you by 2.5 seconds. So you see someone casting at you, you blink, that Chaos Bolt still comes flying at you, but now it misses because you've reflected that spell and you've blinked away, so most likely he's out of range and he's trying to chase you down, and you've bought yourself a nice bit of time. As far as avoiding casters, Prismatic Cloak, this was my out. Prismatic Cloak with 2 charges on the ice block that you're healing yourself up, and you've got Dragon's Breath, and you also have Counterspell. Using all that stuff properly around a caster will get it done. Then there's this great ability, Dense Ice. Dense Ice, so let's look at the other ones. It envelops you in a temporal shield for 4 seconds. All damage taken while shield will instantly be restored when the shield ends. So it's like, yeah, you've got 4 seconds to live. And what can you really get done in 4 seconds? Will your rotations be proper? Will there be a rogue stunning you? You know, it's like that 4 seconds could be a complete loss. On the other side, you got your spell steal. Now it's a 15-second cooldown, but can steal all spells. Blizzard removed a tremendous amount of buffs. I don't know if you've noticed. So as far as, you know, stealing spells and the viability of this ability, it's less. I found that, you know, so we've discussed your outs for casters. Let's discuss your melee outs. Dense Ice increases the amount your ice block barrier absorbs by 60%, but your ice block barrier can only absorb physical damage, which is perfect because I've already discussed the caster outs. So now you're going to increase your melee out damage by 60%. So the shield absorbs 189,980 damage, which is 200,000 almost. And you add another 60% to that, you're up over 3,000. So you're able to take pretty much the brunt of any major hit from a melee class that would come in. You know, using your blink, using the 2 charges on the Frost Nova, or what you're going to want to use here. Perhaps an invis, your ice blocks. But between all of those abilities, you know, even your Dragon Breath, because it's a 20-second cooldown, will get you away from the melee. I felt that the Dense Ice is incredible. I felt like that's a no-brainer talent. It really makes it a lot of fun knowing that melee can't touch you for a while. So we've discussed Tinder before. If your fireball has not been cast for 8 seconds, your next fireball will deal 30% increased damage with a lower casting time. So I found that, you know, as I stepped out of, you're going to find that there's this moment where you're just casting Pyroblast and you're just casting Phoenix Flames, you know, for quite a while, and you know, it lasts over the 8 seconds. So at that point, when you're coming back, you come back with the Fireball and the Inferno Blast, and you'll be good to go. In the bottom of the tier, you have Flame Cannon. And Flame Cannon, after standing in combat for 2 seconds, your maximum health increases, damage, and your range of spell increases. So by 5% on each of them, stacking up to 3 times. So you stand still for 6 seconds, and you've got 15% increased damage. It ramps up really quickly. Other than that, I'd love to give you a little gameplay, but I'm not prepared to right now. I really hope that this made sense to you guys. I hope you get a chance to try it out, and I hope you like it. Please subscribe. Thanks. Okay, so I'm running in. I'm going to go ahead and apply Scorch until I heat up. Once I heat up, I'm going to spam my Inferno Blast. Now, what to understand there is that even though I'm casting Scorch, let's go ahead and reset that. Once I'm sending out Scorch, if I heat up and I'm still sending out another, so come on, heat up. Of course not now, right? I want something. So it heat up. So if you notice, I was still casting a second Scorch. Now I can't guarantee that that second Scorch is going to proc, but I know that if I cast that second Scorch and I spam Inferno Blast, the Inferno Blast touches down prior to the Scorch. So you do get that instant Pyroblast. So you don't have to worry about that Scorch getting in the way. I find just keep casting it. Keep doing your burst DPS until you get your proc. Once you have your large your hot streak active and you're ready to send out your Pyroblast, you want to go ahead and combust. The reason being is because you can actually activate more Pyroblast off that Pyroblast and the Phoenix Flame, using them in consecutive rotation back and forth, because you need 2 crits in a row. So you'll end up proccing 2 additional Pyroblasts by combusting properly. On the ground. So go ahead and you Scorch. You get your hot streak going. There I am. I'm still scorching, but I'm going to spam my Inferno Blast. Once I have it, I combust, I send it, I Phoenix Flame to proc another, I send it, I Phoenix Flame to proc another, I send it, I Phoenix Flame to proc another, I send it. See what I'm talking about? And then you can go into an Inferno Blast to get another, and you proc it, then you have a short fireball because of the honor talent. At that point, you can go ahead and Infernal Blast to get another proc, go back into the Phoenix Flame, run your fireball. Targets might be moving around a little bit. You can reposition. Like I said, you don't want to reposition too much because you're increasing your damage by 15% by standing in one place with your flame cannon, which is at the bottom of the PvP tree there. I found that was the best ability to use out of that, so it's a good way to go. So like I said, you're running into combat, you're scorching. Another one to consider while you're running into combat, so you might want to turn your scorch into a living bomb, and the reason being is because the living bomb, if that was to proc, you get additional, because if you notice, I'm getting a tremendous amount of procs right there just by putting a living bomb up on the target, which created an extra global cooldown. I couldn't run Scorch into Scorch, but I ran Scorch into a living bomb, which did a tremendous amount of damage for me. And then when the living bomb ticks out, you know, you're hitting multiple targets that are in range, so you're getting additional procs that way. I find that, you know, you're just constantly proccing. And like I said, you want to kind of use the fireball, you know, enough for your procs. It's great single damage, but you want to guarantee that they're spaced far enough apart that you get that nice quick fireball cast. It's great for throwing into the rotation. I feel that if you focus yourself on just the Phoenix Flames and the Pyroblasts, you'll find that's where the burst is at. I hope this helps. Good luck to you.